Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the Enter the Labyrinth podcast, the podcast where we help you navigate the labyrinth that is the Lorcana metagame. This time I am joined by two more Team Labyrinth team members in Humble and LorcanaBro, and I'll throw it over to Humble first to give a little bit of an introduction about himself.
Hey everyone, how you doing? It's Humble. You might know me as Mufasa guy if you've been following me on Twitter or are one of the Patreons that have been interacting with me in our Discord. Deck's been having me lost in the sauce for about 3 weeks now, but it paid off, so can't really complain.
All right, LorcanaBro.
Hey guys, I'm LorcanaBro. Real name's Aaron Rubin. I've been playing Lorcana basically ever since it came out, and before that, I was playing Magic: The Gathering. I started playing Magic: The Gathering in like 2007 when I was in high school, and played Standard, played a ton of Modern, ton of Legacy. Legacy was always my specialty. I'd been on the Pro Tour for Magic. So just, a lot of that experience has definitely translated over to Lorcana.
All right, and so this weekend was the TheaBeasty 10K, and a whole bunch of Team Labyrinth team members actually played in it. I can't remember if we had, 6 or 7 of us, 8 maybe?
No, I think it
Basically,
was seven. It was
almost
seven,
the
I
whole
think.
team. Yeah, so we got to do that, and both Humble and Lorcana Bro here actually made the top cut, which is why they're here joining me today. So yeah,
Yeah, but Aaron did it on a real deck, so
well, it's actually honestly more impressive to do it on a fake deck.
nah, I got lucky. I got really lucky with my matchups.
Well, to be fair, I think it kind of always takes some luck, especially when you look at a tournament like that 10K had. I mean, I can't remember how many people exactly it got to, but it's been the biggest tournament so far in
Yeah, it was like
Lorcana.
almost 400. I think it was like 370 something. So it was a pretty big event.
It was also kind of a murderer's row. Like, if you look at the people who were in that tournament, I mean, there were, I'll just say most of the top players in the game participated, as far as I could tell. Basically, everyone I recognized that has ever played any online Lorcana was there, which is awesome. So yeah, making
Yeah,
the
it
top
was
cut of that is great.
yeah, it was definitely a really neat event. I had some friends that actually traveled to Atlanta for the SCG con, and they're like, "Oh, it's like a 5K. There's only like 50 people." And I was like, well, "Why are there only 50 people?" And they're like, "Well, there just happens to be a 10K that you don't have to travel for or own physical cards." So like people did that. And I was like, "Oh, that makes a lot more sense."
Yeah, but all right. Well, I would like you guys to talk about your tournament experience, and I guess we'll start with Lorcana Bro first.
Yeah, sure. So I played Amber Steel. I had been really high on Green Steel for the entire week before the event. I played it in the Mishi Monday tournament. I got fourth place. I played it into the Manticore event. I think I also got top four in that. So it was just having really nice results with Green Steel. Um, Made a YouTube video on it. But yeah, I was loving Green Steel, was feeling really good. And then just like the day before the event, I was just play testing with my friend who also played in the tournament. His name's Guarzales, a really good player. But we were just jamming games red purple versus green steel. And on from my historical experience, that was a really good matchup for me. But I was going about 50-50 with him, or maybe 55-45. And something just didn't feel right. So I woke up the next day, and right before the tournament, I was like, Gonzalez, just play me one game real quick. And I played Amber Steel, and I just like crushed him 2-0. And then I was like, okay, I'm just playing this deck. The only change I made to my previous Amber Steel deck was that I added 4 Mr. Smees. I've always been a flute song guy, but I just added 4 Mr. Smees. I think that Mr. Smee pairs really nicely with flutes just because you're looking to just get lore fast and use the flutes to finish off the game. So it pairs really nicely with the flute game plan, and also, has a small synergy with Rapunzel sometimes. So I felt like that was enough to include it in the deck. I did cut down to 2 Benjas to make room for that, and I think my one change after the tournament is to definitely go back up to 3 Benjas and, find a way to make that work. But yeah, chose Amber Steel, and I went on an absolute heater from the beginning of the tournament. First 4 rounds, I 2-0'd my opponents.
Nice.
In the 5th round, I got O2'd by Green Purple, which you would think is, an amazing matchup. I actually saw Green Purple and I was like, ooh, yay. And I got O2'd. But then in the 6th and 8th round, I 2-0'd again, and then I split 1-1. So I went 6-1-2 on the tournament, which is just, it felt completely insane to be running that hot, or, to be winning that hot. Into like some really tough matchups too. I played Red Purple 4 times, and I 2-0'd them 3 times, and I split 1-1 one time. And that was honestly one of the major considerations for playing this deck, was that I expected Red Purple to be the most represented deck in the format. And I just wanted a deck that could 2-0 it really consistently, which is also why I played Flutes over, another version. I know that people are running the Pride Lands version or the Lantern version, and I just don't think those have the same assertive game plan as the Flute version does into Red Purple. I did, in the top 8, run into my ultimate nemesis of Red Blue Popsicle, which is, regardless of what version of Amber
That
Steel
game's
you
just
play,
unwinnable.
it's a bad matchup. I think with the Flutes, you do pick up a lot of percentage points to be able to steal that matchup. I did 2-0 it in the Swiss when I played it. But we went to game 3 and they were able to take it from me. So, but definitely, or not top 8, top 16. I think I accidentally said top 8 there. But yeah, great run with the deck. Definitely really happy with it, and would definitely run it back.
My story is very similar to LorcanaBro's, because I also chose a deck that I could 2-0 Red Purple consistently, which I did. Like, I played it 4 times in Swiss and 2-0'd it each time. Obviously, I was playing Red Yellow Mufasa, which I had been spending the last 3 weeks tailoring to actually win 2 games in a best of 2 format. A lot of people said that it couldn't be done. Mufasa is a best of 3 deck only. It can't win 2 games in a row. I disagreed. It was hard. Like I said, it's been 3 weeks, and I was pretty lost in the sauce trying to figure out which 60 cards would fit the bill. But like I said, like Aaron landed on Flute Song, I landed on Mufasa for the same reason that I figured Red Purple would be the most represented deck, and as someone who played a ton of Red Purple since set 1, I didn't want to play Red Purple because I was bored. Like, the lines are the same. Every game is predictable. It's just got old, and I want to do something different. And I chose Red Fossa because it was like kind of like a pet deck. I've been playing that since set 2. Anytime I wanted to win an event, I would audible back to Red Purple. But anytime I just wanted to enjoy myself, I just always played Mufasa, and it worked out. I got in top 16 by the one absolute mad lad who was still on Fish Hooks, Pinocchios, and Rafikis. And when I found out on my top 16 match, I was playing against Red Purple on the draw, and I was on the play rather. I was like, oh, easy, this is great. And then he just goes turn 3 Fish Hook, and I was like, oh, Fish Hook got hands, I'm dead. We took it to game 3. Barely managed to get squeak it out, but he got there. And I can't be mad because he was playing the cards that got me, but the other Red Purple players were not playing the cards that got me. And how Aaron 4-0'd the first, or 2-0'd the first 4 opponents, I 2-0'd the last 4 opponents and got in there that way. So had a pretty good run.
That's super cool too, though. How did it feel? Did you feel like you were out of the tournament before you ended up making it?
Yeah, obviously. So I also kind of have a background in Magic. That's what the game I came from was, Magic and Pokemon. So having a tournament where you start 1-1-1, you're just like, well, I'm dead. This is cool. I just time to go get a sandwich. And I don't know what happened. I was just I can't not keep playing because I'm still technically alive.
Mm-hmm.
So then I 2-0'd one opponent. I was like, all right, cool. I got to 2-0 the next 4 opponents. And then I 2-0'd the second opponent. I was like, all right, surely this isn't going to stop, right? And then I just kept playing into red purple. So like I just kept 2-0ing them, and I was like, oh, never mind. I'm locked now. I have 20 points out of nowhere. So it was a pretty sweet miracle run, and like I'm really happy that my testing paid off and I got really favorable on my matchups.
That's nice. So do you still like the deck? Is there anything you'd change?
I love the deck. Actually, I've been talking about to a lot of people who's been messaging me that I purposely took a weaker match into the green decks, and like Jafar Wheel. So basically, all the decks you don't really expect to see play. I took a weaker match into those to have a better match into like your red purples, the red blues, the more top echelon of the meta that you would expect to see in a large event. So yeah, like my loss was to green steel. That is actually unwinnable. It just you can't do it. I won one to green purple, which surprised me because that's also a terrible match. And I won one against a blue steel player that game two saw four pops, three harams, a wheel, two dimes, and a bell. And I was like, well, I mean, I can't do anything against this. But yeah, if I changed anything, it would probably be to try and shore up the green matchup. I've been working a little bit, shifting around some cards, and like it's been a little bit better into green. But if you're looking to like a bigger event where you kind of know that these four decks are going to be the most represented, then I would still play the exact same 60 I played this weekend.
All right. Well, it's pretty cool. Um, we have talked about the two game format previously on the podcast, but given that you guys haven't been on before, I'd love to hear your opinions now that you've had a chance to play the two game format.
Yeah,
So
for sure. I will say I'm coming from a long background of Magic the Gathering competitive play, which has always been best of three. I am really trying to have as open mind as possible going into it, but obviously I'm definitely biased just because like I want best of three is what I've been working with for a long time. I will. This is like my third best of two tournament now, and I will say in my other best of two tournaments, I ended with like records of like 2-0-3 or something. So I 2-0 twice and I split the other three games. So the vast majority of your games, and I think that's like a more realistic tournament outcome is, you know, about 60% of your games you're going to split, and maybe the other 40% is going to go 2-0 one way or the other. At least that's been what it's been in my experience, which is not a bad record. If you break down 2-0-3, that's a 7-3 record, you know, which is a 70% win rate, which is very good in card games. It just doesn't feel like when you, I don't know, there's something psychological about it because when you say, oh, I'm 2-0-3, it does not feel like a record that is good that you should be proud of. But I actually like placed in the top 8 in both of those tournaments with that record. So there's something about it that just, you know, it doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel like the tournament's going well, even though it actually can be or maybe is. So that's one thing from those tournament experiences. From this one, where I really benefited from, you know, getting that extra point from the 2-0s, it just felt really unfair. Like I was just kind of like, this is really dumb. Like I'm racking up so many points so quickly. It really feels like a very powerful mechanic to be able to get 3 points in a round. So I don't know. From my experience, like as someone who benefited tremendously from it in this tournament, it felt a little bit too powerful, and that, you know, you probably need to nerf the 2-0 scoring mechanic. And from the other side of it, when, you know, you're not benefiting from that 2-0, it just doesn't feel like the tournament's going very well because you're just essentially
Shout out Wonder.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I felt it too. I know it's like I was 1-1-1 or whatever after the first 3 rounds, like similar to Humble, but then like I won one and then I drew one and then I drew another one. And the whole time I'm like, well, I'm probably out, but I can't really quit because if I somehow rattle off 4 2-0s here at the end, then I'll make top 16.
And
So it was
I'll
this.
let Humble talk about. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there,
Oh, no
but
problem.
I'll let Humble talk about that. I think that's the one exciting thing about the format is that you're never like truly out.
Yeah, so like I will say that I'm not exactly a fan of it. Like this was my first best of two event, and it went well for me. So like I can't really say I don't really have like a negative bias to it. But I do come from Magic, and my biggest complaint with the two game format was it leaves game like it's just unsatisfying, right? Like you sit down, you win one, then like your opponent wins one, and typically you would go to game three. It stuff's on the line, it's heated, like you're going back and forth, and you just have a really good game, right? Like it's really satisfying. Whether you win or lose, there's something satisfying about like getting to that point and going, yeah, man, I got there, or no, he got me on that one. And I feel like it's taken away from us, right? Like that's my biggest complaint is like not that it's bad or that it's dumb or whatever. It's just not satisfying. And as a player, even at a competitive level, like if you're not having fun, you like what's the point, you know? So that's just my biggest complaint. Coming from the Miracle standpoint, like I said, like I was 1-1-1, and I was like, cool, this was fun, I guess. And then I just out of nowhere just started 2-0ing my opponents, and I was like, oh, I'm alive still. Because I'm like I said, coming from Magic, you go 1-1-1, you might as well pack it in. Like you're done. So having a rough start doesn't feel as bad. That being said, the 3 points is in fact really strong, and I think we need to just go to 2 points. Like the third point, like what does it really do? Because it just puts you so far ahead, right? Like the fact that you can go like 4-0-3, you didn't lose at all, but the guy who went 5-3, right, or like 5-2, he lost twice and he still has more points than you. That's like it's a little rough. So outside of like the bad beats, my biggest concern is just like it's just unsatisfying.
Yeah, it seems to be the take a lot of people have had. It does feel weird, and to some extent, I wonder if maybe that would change or if you'd get used to it eventually. But certainly,
Yeah,
a
I
lot
mean
of people
like
have had that thought.
brass tacks, right? Like we're all competitive players, and it's not a deal breaker. Like we're still gonna go play challenges. We're still gonna play
Hmm.
in these online events. We're still gonna go play 1Ks. We're still gonna play set championships. Like we're just griping. Like it's like a first world problem, right? Like I want to play best of three, but like we're still gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like it's just we're just trying to complaining to get the thing we want, which I don't know if we should. You know, what I mean? Like because at the end of the day, it does give players a shot. You know what I mean? So like doesn't matter how good you are. If you walk into a room and you start 4-0, yeah, that's fine. But like if you're having a rough go at it, like even you could be the best player in the world. Like John Finkel loses games all the time. So being able to like step into an event, go 0-2, and be like, wow, I'm actually not dead. Like I don't have to like just go home. I can still like win out and have a miracle run and win out and top like place in the top was it's a good feeling. So like I don't really have an opinion one way or the other right now. Like I don't have a negative opinion or like a positive opinion because like it worked for me, I guess. But we'll have to play more best of two to figure it out.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, given that this hasn't been run for any official events yet, that it's possible we'll see Ravensburger change the format in the future. But certainly for the first batch of these Lorcana challenges, we'll have to play with what they've announced. I'm assuming so.
Yeah.
Get used to
Yeah,
it.
my biggest fear is that 4,000 of us say we want best of three, and 4,001 people say they want to keep it best of two, and they just keep it best of two. Which, like, again, not a deal breaker, but still kind of rough.
Well, I don't think that. So, just to kind of touch upon what Humble just said, I don't think that, at least from my camp, like, I don't think the players are saying, like, wow, 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 we want best of three. I think it's more so like, okay, you've introduced a best of two format. Is this truly like a fair and balanced format? And it's not so much about best of 2 sucks, let's go back to best of 3, but there might be some changes that need to be made to best of 2 to make it more balanced and maybe to make it a more feel good experience. So I don't think it's, all the complaining and all the noise is a bad thing per se. It's more about what adjustments need to be made to best of 2, if any, to enhance the player experience. Another thing we didn't touch upon that best of 2 does is that it warps the format in a different way than best of 3 does.
That is very true.
Which I mean, I don't want to say it's like a terrible thing, but it's not I don't like it, what it does, because it incentivizes you to 2-0 your opponent, right? You don't want 1-1s. 0-2s aren't so bad because you're just giving up a point, but if you can 2-0, you get 3 points. So the name of the game is 2-0. So how are you going to do that is play a polarizing deck that has some really amazing matchups and also some really poor matchups, and just hope that the majority of the time you're running into your really amazing matchups and that you're able to 2-0 them. So it punishes,
I did it.
some of the more consistent decks in the format that, maybe have a 50% win rate against everything, but their players are hoping to leverage their skill advantage over a best of 3 games. And that's where, that 50% win rate with that deck is really shining through. You're not going to have as much success with that kind of strategy in the best of 2. And I don't like that it pushes out those more, fair decks that just kind of want to like hunker down and interact and play a fair game, knowing that, okay, like maybe game 1, I didn't mulligan to my key card pieces and I lost, but now that I know what I'm playing, I can mulligan towards my interaction that's meaningful in these matchups and, win the next 2 games. You don't get to have that kind of experience. And I think that does take a little bit of skill out of the game.
Did that affect either of your deck choices? I know that's one thing that pushes me away from something like a Ruby Amethyst, obviously, a deck that I've played a lot in previous sets. Well, a lot of people have played it in previous sets, but when you look at a format like this, and it's like, well, almost all my matches go to game 3 because I'm 1-1 up to that point, obviously. So
I would say yes and no, right? So, like, again, I chose probably the most fair deck of the format. Like, anyone who's played Mufasa before and knows that, like, you need that game 3 the majority of the time to win the game, right? I focused my time and energy trying to figure out if this deck could 2-0. And I succeeded, right? So, like, I got a little rewarded. Obviously, I played 6 of the best possible matchups like that I could have played and got rewarded for it. So, yeah, like, I do agree with Aaron. We're like, playing a polarizing deck shouldn't always be the go-to, right? Like, you're gonna have players that are gonna sleeve red purple because like they have reps on it. It's the Jund of this game, right? It's got a 50-50 against everything. So to have your testing and your skill differential not matter feels bad, and like I'll agree to that. But also, I flipped a Chernabog off of Mufasa, and it gave me so much serotonin that I feel like you get rewarded for those things too. So like no one's forcing you to play a non-polarizing deck in best of 2, just the same way no one's forcing you to play a polarizing deck in best of 3. I understand your point where like you're incentivized more because you want those 2-0s, but you can also build your non-polarizing deck in a way that gives you an advantage against the polarizing decks, if that makes sense.
As an aside, I would just like to point out that any serotonin or dopamine you got off that Mufasa hit, that's a zero-sum game. Someone lost that dopamine on the other side.
yeah. If you want to see me do it, you should go watch the Alphos's run. One of his videos, he posted the VOD. He played against me round 7, and game 2. That's what happened. Is he had a really good board state, and he kills my Mufasa, and I just flip a Chernobog, and he was like, "Oh, I lose." I was
That's
like,
hilarious. Oh,
yeah, no,
poor
it feels
Alphonse.
good.
All right. Well, any other thoughts on the two-game format, or are we pretty much exhausted it at this point?
I mean, like I said, it's like kind of like it's undecided, right? Like we're competitive players, we're gonna play regardless. So like, it's not a deal breaker. Like it wasn't a bad event by any means. I mean, like Wonder might disagree. You know, like he went 1-0-8, and having that many forced draws feels really bad. So like, I can see both sides.
Yeah, he,
But
by the way,
from
wanted to be here to complain to all of you. Although he's already done that on the podcast, so
oh yeah,
I'm not sure how necessary that is. But yeah,
I'm
it's
sure we've all heard it too in the Discord.
oh yeah,
But
it's
like, yeah, it's rough, right? You go 1-0-8, like you play an event and you just like get to tie 8 rounds. That's not fun. Like it's just not. So that, like I said, that's my main concern. Is like it's just gonna lead to people not having fun, and like that's my biggest thing.
yeah. Also, just to be clear, shout out to TheaBeasty and all the judges for throwing these events for us. Obviously, we're really appreciative to have competitive events like this to play, especially online. It's nice and easy to access for everyone. And also, obviously, thanks to Ravensburger, we're obviously super happy to have
Oh
supported
yeah, for
organized
sure.
play. We're not saying don't do it where you're not appreciative of it. Just this is just our feedback on the format. That's all.
Fun fact,
Oh yeah,
actually, this is
for
my
sure.
first online event.
Ooh, how'd that
The
go? Did you have to deal with any
So
wonkiness? Were you like worried about using the systems at all?
no, so here's my thing, right? Like I didn't really like Pixelborn in the beginning.
Hmm.
Like I thought it was a great tool to like see if you had an idea that had legs. So like I would get on, test my deck a little bit, see if it could work, and then I would like quickly get off because internet issues, which is like obviously a me thing, not a Pixelborn thing. But then like bugs and whatnot, and like some like I would dragonfire a card and it would just stay on my screen for like the rest of the game. And like it comes down to I'd rather play paper. But it was a wonderful event, to be honest with you. Like Pixelborn felt good. The event was ran well. The online interface, like Lorcana Play Network, felt really good. So like yeah, I would. It was my first one, but it will not be my last one.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. How do you feel about that, LorcanaBro? Have you
oh
had any
no,
experiences with those tournaments?
as someone who plays Mishi Monday pretty much every Monday and Manticore's tournament every Wednesday, and this is my third TheaBeasty event. I've actually been fortunate enough to top 16 or better all 3 of the events that I've played in.
Humble brag, knocking
I,
me out once too, by the way. Thank you.
that's right. Yes, that's the one I got. I got third in that one. I lost to Sky, who ended up winning. Um, but I love them. I think that their events are run super smooth. Like all 3 of those organizers run really smooth, really nice events. Either on Lorcana Play Network or on what's the other one?
Limitless.
Play
Yes,
Limitless.
Limitless. Yeah, they're both really, really good, easy to use interfaces. The organizers run a really tight ship, and they all, take the feedback from the players very seriously to, continue to improve their tournaments and just enhance the experience for everyone. So I've really loved them, and definitely I'm not going to stop playing them.
I do want to point out the reason I don't play like I don't get to play Mishi Mondays, and I don't get to play like the weeklies or the monthlies that Manicore runs because I work. Like I work nights, so I can't play Monday and I can't play Wednesday. And I just recently like reshifted my schedule so I could have weekends off to travel for like challenges and like 5Ks and stuff. And it just so happened that this event fell on a day that I was off. So like I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll light $25 on fire and see what happens. And turns out I didn't really light it on fire. I just tripled it. Or
Plan on house money
quad-
now in the future.
yeah, exactly, yeah. The like top end this TheaBeasty is gonna help me get to Atlanta, so pretty
That's
happy with
true.
that.
Yeah, I suppose you get what's the paycheck for that one?
I think we got to like 250 for top 16.
Yeah, top 16 was $250. It was really interesting that just like 5 minutes before the round, I was looking at the payout structure and I was like, okay, we're locked for $250. Top 8 got 500. So, I was basically like, I'm playing a $250
Yeah,
match of
Yeah.
Lorcana right now, which is like pretty exciting. And then if you advance to
it
the
was 1,000, I
top
think,
eight,
right?
it was 500 to 1,000. So it's like that single individual match of Lorcana that you're about to play is worth $500, and then it kind of it's still scaled up, but not as significantly as
It's
those
I think
two.
it's scaled by 3 and then 4, so it went to
Yeah.
13, 16, 2,000.
So top 8 to top 4 was like this sweet spot of like you really want to hit top 4. Obviously, it's nice to get further, but you've kind of hit the maximum like EV in terms of the price of the game.
Do
But
do do you want to mention too? Because if we both would have won our top 16, we would have fought in top 8. We would have had to team kill each other.
sounds like we have to set up a $500 money match and
Oh man, like
settle
me
this
and me
one
and Moof
off.
Moof are ready, my guy. Just bring red purple or something, and we're golden.
Funny. Yeah, that's the thing about being on a team with a bunch of good players is eventually you run into each other and you just have to live with that, I guess.
Yeah, but like the testing you get prior
Mm.
to the event is like kind of priceless in my opinion.
Yeah, it's super awesome. I wish I had more time, but we'll see. As I plan to take some time, make sure we get some testing in before the big challenge. I think it'd be super super cool if we as a team could like break the format and like have the deck and go in and just absolutely crush
I
it.
don't want to brag or anything, but I think I already did that. Like Moof Moof,
Uh,
etc.
well, if the
No,
deck is Mufasa, I might be the one person not playing the deck.
Oh no,
I
I
don't.
won't
Yeah, I
play it
think.
either. I will not play that deck.
Oh man,
Sorry.
you guys aren't believers. Come on.
No. It's not my
Mm,
it's not my style. It's not my thing. Nothing against all the work that you've put into the deck. It's just
Uh,
not the kind of deck that I like to play.
no, yeah, I agree. Like I can't play steel to save my life. I'm allergic for sure. So like I think us as a unit, the entire team getting together and like formulating 2 or 3 decks that are like, if you want to top the challenge, these are your best chances, and like these are the decks we take. Then like I'm definitely interested in that. As long as they're not all 3 steel, then like I'm on board. But as long as there's at least one option where I don't have to play steel.
I imagine either Ruby Sapphire or Ruby Amethyst will be viable at the very least, so you should be okay.
I don't know. Like there's another color combination we're missing there, and it's still ruby, but it's amber, man. So
Yeah, I'm just
yeah.
not big on like windmill slamming the top card of my deck. That's all.
Oh, I am. But it's also a reason I chose to not play like any non-character cards. Like I want my Mufasas and my Pongos to be 100% every single time, and that's a lot of the debate in like the people who play this deck, right? Like, do we
Yeah.
play Teeth? Do we play Lantern? Do we play any number of Be Prepared? Are we playing Bare Necessities? Nah, we're playing none of those cards. We don't need those. Like I want my Mufasa to hit something every single time. And I've played plenty of mirror matches where like the game comes down to like we trade Mufasas, they hit a lantern, and I hit a dude, and I just win the game off of it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a cool card. I'm glad people enjoy it. But it's not for me, but that's okay. So, as far as the rest of the tournament, obviously this is the biggest tournament ever. So, looking at the lists people played and took to top cut, obviously, that's a big accomplishment for anyone. I would say overall, we talked and agreed that for the most part the lists weren't that surprising. There were just two standout lists, which were a Amethyst Steel mid-range deck that was basically just mono four ofs of like good stuff. Any thoughts on that deck?
I mean, I personally don't have many thoughts because, like I said, it's playing steel. I think it's cool. Like he just opted to go a bunch of cards that kill something on the opposing side of the board, and then a bunch of cards that if they stick on your side of the board just get you insane value. He's not. I don't see him playing Beast, which is honestly probably a good call with the number of like Medusas rolling around. Like Robin Hood Robin Hood's a card that you risk for, right? Like you shift on 3, you get to do stuff, and if your opponent has a Medusa on 6, and like they have a Medusa on 6, him playing Razul Palace Guard
Yep.
was real neat. Like, excuse me, that was a card that like I had completely overlooked for more reasons than it just being steel, right? Like it's kind of a meme, right? But it's also a captain, which is a very relevant card text to have when you're playing something like Smee. So having like the full suite of 8 captains to make sure your suite's not killing itself, that, I think that was really smart and it paid off.
I think it's an interesting card, and it's one I'd certainly considered. I think the trouble it has mostly is that it's competing directly for slots with Smee and Prince Eric, which are probably in a vacuum better cards overall. So it's sometimes
Is
like
is the 2-drop steel Eric a captain?
it's not no.
Like yeah, like he's on a ship, so I didn't know. But I guess right, like if you're trying to get the most value out of your Smee, maximizing your captain slot is probably correct. If I'm looking at the card again, he's like a 1/3, right? Or like an
It's
X
a
three.
1/3, but like an effective 3/3. Well, it's got no
Yeah, he's
damage over.
a 3/3, and he becomes a 1/3 as soon as he has damage on him.
Yep.
So like the 1, in my opinion, isn't as important as the 3 is, right? Like that stat line is very relevant, especially when you're looking at mirror matches. And I don't mean mirror matches as like a direct mirror match, but like he's playing a steel versus a steel deck. The parity between 2 and 3 is huge, right? Which is a lot of the reason. Like I played I played Sleepy, and I played Sleepy a lot of the reason because he had 3 toughness and could survive a lot of the additional removal or the challenges that early game opponents present to you. Like Cindy on 1 singing a Storm Range on is not nearly as scary when it doesn't kill your guy.
Hmm.
So the 3 stat line was really relevant. I would assume for him because it was really big for me, but like that's just a standout of something like I can see right off the bat looking at this card that like would make me consider it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that stands out to me is I personally would want to get the bosses on a roll out of the deck, but you know, I
I don't
haven't
know.
played that much.
I played a lot of just in time during set 1, so like I've got a soft spot for cards that people think are really bad and arguably are really bad, but like I love them. I can't help it.
Any thoughts, Aaron?
Yeah, I didn't even see this deck until just earlier when you linked it to me. Didn't know this deck top aided, but it's really interesting. So for the viewers, it's got 4 Captain Hooks, 4 Robin Hoods in the 1-drop slot, Mr. Smee and Razul, Benja, Friends, and Storm Rage on, Madame Mim, Maleficent, Smash, Bosses on a roll, Along Came Zeus, both Merlins and Robin Hood. So the deck caps out at 5 ink. So definitely a deck that's trying to go fast. But when you think about a deck that's trying to go fast, you would expect to see a lot of characters that lure for 2 or 3. And a lot of these characters don't. Razul lures for 1, Maleficent Sorceress lures for 1, Fox obviously lures for 1. And then your 2 lures are just your Robin Hood, your Mr. Smee, and your Benja. So it's not what you would consider to be a traditional aggro deck. I'm having some trouble trying to visualize how this deck would play out in terms
So
of trying to win.
as resident bad card enjoyer,
Yeah.
I do want to like looking at the list and like kind of going over the card choices. I do want to talk about bosses on a roll because it seems like a build your own wheel, so to speak. Being able to look at the top 5 cards and like know what's coming and how they're going to impact your board state, like because he's playing 4 of everything, right? His mulligan strategy is probably like really straightforward. Like in the blue matchups, you want a Benja, so finding Benja is not exactly hard. Like during your mulligan, but then Storm, like the bosses on a roll comes out and just assists you in finding those cards even further. So I think what he gives up in just like overall, I would say power level in some of the cards that his card choices that he's like not running, like Sad Beast and A Whole New World, he makes up for by being able to stack his deck in a way with bosses on a roll that he finds those cards that he needs on pivotal turns. So like for example, like if you bosses on a roll, you're on the play versus like blue like Amber Ruby. No, sorry, that's me. Blue, like red and blue, right? Then you want the Benja on turn 3 to, or like on turn 4 to be able to stop them from drawing cards off a realm. You sing bosses on a roll, you gain a lore, you find the Benja, you stack it on top, and the top card of your deck is now live. So like, again, resident bad card enjoyer here, but like it kind of does make sense when you're playing a deck of all four ofs that you want a card to find your answers consistently.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but in that example that you just brought up, you don't get that bench until turn 5 of the game.
Yeah.
Hey man, so, math is hard, and I didn't say it was right.
Downside, like it's too late. Fishbone Quill's already done its job. Like it's been out for 2 turns. Like even if you Benja it on turn 5, I'm not sold that having that consistency is worth an entire card out of your hand and a lore. So, but like I said, I've never played a single game with this deck. So, and it tops 16. So obviously, the pilot Matthias knows something that I don't, and I just it's not a deck I would expect to see in the top 16. That's all.
For sure. And then
yeah, it's definitely weird.
There was one other deck that was a little odd, which was a Amethyst Emerald deck, which in and of itself is not super weird. Just that this specific deck was like not the typical Curse Merfolk Flynn Rider tempo deck. It was like a mid-range, go much bigger style version of the deck.
That is kind of interesting. Like, I don't know if I would sleeve this color combination if I wasn't doing something with like Cursed Merfolk discard synergy. But it worked. I mean, like,
so I played this guy in round 5. He was the green purple player that 2-0'd me as the Amber Steel player. And in game 1, he just like played 2-drop Ursula, took a song, bounced the 2-drop Ursula, replayed it, took another song, used what's the other song? Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo to return it back to his hand and replay it, take another song. And then he's got some top end. I'm trying to find the list. I don't have it exactly in front of me.
And the top end is like
it's Diego Saz, who I also have played against this guy quite a bit. He's a great player. But yeah, he's topping out at like Big Elsa, which is another just like once he gets to that and he has all these ways to bounce it and just continue to lock down like my big threats, like it felt very powerful even against the Amber Steel deck. And there is another spicy card that really overperformed in the matchup against me, Lyle Tiberius Rourke.
Yes.
So it does an interesting thing against singers where, like, okay, I'm a singer deck, so even if you give one of my characters Reckless, I can still sing a song to get around the fact that it's supposed to challenge. But now I have to sing a song. So when you get into these board stall situations where I'm not ready to sing all my songs and pop off just yet, I'm still developing, and he plays a Rourke, or a Rourke is in play and he returns it and bounce it and forces me to sing a song, he now has access to banish my key singer. So it actually played a really impactful role in the matchup. Just like, I'm not going to give you time to set up all your singers so you can sing all your removal, wheel, find more removal, and clear all the board. I'm going to, kind of force you to do that now before you're completely set up. So really interesting cards.
Yeah, for sure. Lyle Tiberius Rourke stands out to me as like a card that, I mean, I played it in limited. It's certainly a limited powerhouse, but it definitely feels like it's got so much text, decent stats, that it feels like the sort of card that should see play. I think part of its problem is just that there's not really a deck in Emerald that it fits in, maybe except this deck. But I agree that it seems like an underutilized card for sure.
I think it's his biggest drawback is the fact that he's uninkable, right? Like,
right.
He's fighting for so many other slots that because like let's be completely honest, for the longest time, green was a meme. Like it was
True.
tribal uninkables. So the fact that he is fighting for so many other uninkable card slots that the color already has, that like a lot of people overlook him. And when you look at the card for on face value, you're like, oh yeah, that's it's like kind of whatever. But it, just as Aaron was saying, like it puts the opponent in such a weird position that like you have to do the thing, you have to do the thing you don't want to do, or it's gonna die. And if you do the thing you want to do, then like it's still probably gonna die. So leveraging that as a removal spell in a color combination that doesn't have actual removal is kind of genius. If I much throw it out there, that's really strong.
Yeah, for sure. Otherwise, I mean, I think, this looks like a deck that I haven't seen much of, but I can understand, how this functions, right? It like leverages the Ursulas as high power threats, and then obviously the Mim engine
Yeah,
and the
trying to bibbity bobbity boo your top end to like get
yep,
additional value and like it's not bad on some of your lower guys, right? Like you said, Lyle, Ursula, and any of the Merlins will get insane value for getting bibbity bobbity booed. So it definitely makes sense.
so I'm curious to see if other people pick this up or if it was a flavor of the week thing. We'll
Hey,
see.
I was a huge Eldrazi Displacer fan, so this is kind of speaking to me right now.
I think that's probably good for the TB's the 10K. I think, as our last topic, with set championships coming up, I know we're all planning to play at least one or two. I think Aaron's got a long schedule coming up here, but I guess I want to talk about, what our process is for picking decks, right? Because people are going to be picking decks, they're not sure what to play. Um, how do you go about that?
You wanna take it, Aaron? You want me to?
I mean, I can take it. I have a very simple process. I basically ask myself like two questions. Like, one, what do I expect to be the most represented deck in the format? And, you know, based on that answer, I might have a, a handful of decks that I might be interested to play. And then the next question I ask is, which deck am I the most proficient at of these decks? Which deck do I have a ton of reps on? Which one do I know the intricate lines of really well? And really, those two questions just by itself will kind of answer the question for me. Sometimes I'll disregard that and just play what I'm feeling like. But if I'm really just trying to take it seriously, that's kind of my thought process. So and that's what I did this weekend. Is I expected to see a ton of red purple. um so I could either play red purple tech for the mirror, or I can play amber steel, or blue steel has a really nice red purple matchup as well. But I've just been playing amber steel for so long. It was the deck that I played throughout all of set one. I played it a little bit during set two, and a lot in set three. So it was kind of a no-brainer in terms of this is the deck that I'm definitely the most proficient at, with the exception of maybe red purple. I've played that so much in set two, that it just felt right.
Yeah, it's pretty. So my process is like kind of similar. The only caveat is I have the no steel clause on mine because like I just don't like playing steel. So I tend to lean towards decks that can have powerful board control elements. So like I played a lot of red purple. It's probably the deck I've had the most reps on since set one. Funnily enough, in set one, I played red purple with four Pongos and four Goofies.
One of
So
those people, huh?
oh yeah, so like it's definitely a return to form with this Mufasa deck where I'm just running four Pongos, four Goofies, and now the four minis. But I try to do like play something or pick the deck that would be the most annoying thing for my opponent to deal with, which is like another reason I played the version of Mufasa that I played this weekend. Right, like I'm expecting to play against a bunch of red purple. I'm expecting to play against a bunch of red blue. none of those, the majority of those decks don't have a way to deal with evasive characters. Like when you sit down, I'm sure you've all played against Mufasa before, and you had the line where you kill the Mufasa and you have the Maui to check whatever comes out, and Maui just can't do that when the thing flies. Come to find out, it's pretty
True.
good to have 12 evasive characters in your deck until you get got by a single fish hook and then cost you like $500. But other than that, I try to do the thing that I'm gonna have the most fun doing, but also is gonna leave my opponent the most annoyed. Is lack of a better term. Like I want to make my opponent's cards worse on every turn of the game. And how do I do that? Like the number of times my opponent casted a bare necessities and I just reveal my hand of 7 cards and go 7 dudes, try again, and they just eventually are like, oh, this card does not work for me, or they play grab your swords and I'm just like sitting on 4 guys that have 3 toughness. I'm like, that was cool, Rapunzel. So like doing something that's gonna annoy my opponent, make their cards worse, and just overall let me have a very good time doing it is normally what I when I lean when I build or like choose a deck for a tournament.
All right. Well, pro tip: ink your bare necessities against Mufasa, folks. It's not very good there.
Nah, don't do that. Nah, because if people start inking bare necessity against me, I'm just gonna start playing on characters because they're free.
All right. Well, for me, I think maybe I stress my deck selection a little bit more than the rest of you. In general, like I pride myself on being able to play any deck, any archetype, and I like to be able to play any deck, any archetype at any time, which is a little bit harder sometimes because you fall out of practice with one deck here and there. But so I feel like one of my strengths is if I know what a metagame is going to look like, I can attack it pretty effectively, which is sometimes a difficult skill for people. But like I feel pretty confident that if I knew exactly like what percentage each deck would make up of the metagame, I could tell you what the best deck was. It's just figuring out what that actual metagame is or speculating about it that's the hard part. So I always feel like it's hard for me to pick a deck. One thing, especially when you have experience with a lot of or basically all the competitive decks, it kind of leaves you spoiled for choice, and now you have to sort of whittle down what you're not going to play based on what you think is going to be brought by other players. Still, I try to bring a deck that I have played a lot recently, which hopefully is the decks that are good right now. Sometimes it's not, but like a couple tournaments ago, I was talking about potentially bringing Blue Steel, but I hadn't played a lot of Blue Steel lately, and Blue Steel is kind of too hard to just play without having
Blue
reps in.
Blue Steel is a deck that has a very high floor but also a high ceiling. It's not a deck you can just pick up. I still to this day don't know how Ryan does it. I've tried that deck before and I'm like, nah, can't do it. Like it's not a deck you can just pick up and find immediate success with. You have to play an optimally on every turn of the game, or you just fall very far behind. And like watching him play it, like I'm like, oh, this is really easy. You just fishbone quill and you like ink some cards and you play wheel and refill. It's not that easy. It's hard. It is actively difficult. So anytime someone asks me like, oh, what deck should I play? It is a consideration. It is something that like I will bring up and say blue steel is a very strong choice, but it's not something that you're just gonna pick up and like start winning games with. You're gonna lose a lot of games first. And if you can stick through the whole like I'm gonna lose a bunch, if you can stick through that, then it will pay off.
I will say, irrespective of like blue steel, as part of your deck selection process, and that's something I didn't say as part of my process, but you're gonna want to jam a ton of games, as many games as possible, with whatever decks you're considering, right? So if my first question is, what do I expect to see? Red, purple. These three decks are good at it. My next actual step in the process is, jam as many games as I possibly can in all three of those, see which kind of feels right, and I don't know if any other people listening that will relate to this, but there's like this intangible like feel to a deck that it just like I can tell it just feels good. It feels smooth, and it's not really tied to I'm winning a lot with the deck. Like I could be winning a lot with the deck, but it doesn't feel smooth. Like when you hit a deck that feels smooth, to me that's a very strong indicator. But I couldn't really kind of describe anything further than that. I
That
don't know
does
if
make
you guys
sense.
have that kind of experience.
That does make sense because like I said, I've been playing Mufasa for a long time, so like I know when the deck feels good and I know when the deck feels bad, and I especially know when the deck feels bad after the last 3 weeks of testing it. But being comfortable is also something that's really huge, right? Like a lot of times you'll hear people say like, "Yeah, I was testing this, but like I just went back to all reliable," and they play what they're used to. So like being happy with the deck choice, it feeling smooth is also a very big part of deck selection. So that is something that needs to be like kind of shouted louder for the people in the back because it is a huge thing.
Yeah, I think for me, when you're testing a deck, no one person can actually get the sort of reps that it would require to determine exactly how good a deck is. Like the sample size to know exactly how good Steel Song is versus Ruby Amethyst, you know, 100%. It is just such a vast number that you can never truly know. So part of it is feeling your way through the way games play out and the way matches play out and beyond just the outcome. So I think, when you talk about a deck feeling smooth, it's like there are a few ways you can lose a game, right? You can lose because the deck was bad, or was bad in the matchup. You can lose because you played bad. You can lose because you got unlucky. And I think, the smoothness is regardless of whether or not you won, it wasn't like the deck that was bad, right? Like if you lost, it was because you played bad, maybe, or because you like got unlucky and you know it, like, oh, they hit B prep off the top. Like there's nothing I can do about that. And statistically, that's not going to happen. The deck felt great. I was winning. I just didn't win.
Yeah, the most tilting thing that I like that I've been running into through testing is like when Steel Song gets the nut draw on you,
Hmm.
and you're just sitting there with like 7 cards in hand. They're like, yeah, queen, shift queen, sing wheel, you're dead." And you're just like, "That was fun. I enjoyed this game." So yeah, like those times, like you can't really like those things are bad, but I definitely understand.
Yeah. Overall, as far as deck selection too, I know obviously a lot of people don't have access to 4 copies of every single card that's used in competitive Lorcana. I do think there's some value, obviously, in being very familiar with your deck, and there are plenty of people who are like, deck specialists who've basically primarily only played one deck for this format or even multiple formats. You look at someone like Kendall Burnett, who's basically played nothing but
Red purple.
red purple for 3 straight sets at this point. I don't know if he's played a major tournament with any deck ever that wasn't red purple. So that's no, I'm not, by the way, on online for those not in the know. But
No, Kendall's a madman. Like
yeah.
I thought I was pretty good with red purple since I was playing it since that one, and then like I played a mirror against him, and I was like, "Oh, I'm garbage at this deck." Oh my god,
Yeah,
that
that
he. If I was gonna put anyone as being like probably one of the best players on red, like or at least top 5 best players on red purple, he would be up there for sure.
yeah, I agree. Him, Michael Fronte. There are others, but you know. So anyway, I guess my point is, if you don't have access to every single deck and you're trying to, listen to this and think, well, what can I get out of this? These people are talking about choosing from every deck imaginable. I think like there's some real value to being the best at whatever deck you do have at this point, especially in set 3. Like there's so many viable decks. Yes, as the meta shifts, they sort of go up and down in strength proportional to like, you know, how frequent you run into your good matchup versus bad matchups and stuff. But really just being very practiced is a really, really strong
Yeah.
thing, and I wouldn't overlook it, and I wouldn't worry too much about it if it's like, oh, all I have is green steel. Should I play green steel or try to like borrow a deck? Like it's okay if you know your deck in and out. Like there's some value there in and of itself.
Well, there's also some merit to like taking a deck you like or the deck you have
Right.
and tailoring it in a way that will shore up the matches you're losing to, right? Like I'm gonna go to an event and I expect these 3 decks. You can still play the same 2 colors you've been playing, but build those colors in a way that has a positive matchup into those three decks specifically. And like that's going to go back to, touch on the polarizing versus non-polarizing matchup, right? Like you're going to make your deck more polarizing because you already have a pre-discerned notion that like I'm going to play red purple and red and like ruby sapphire on repeat, and I need to be able to beat those decks. So like I also like so I do think that if you only have access to like three colors, like in entirety, and being able to like use those colors in a niche way, like we just talked about with the purple green, like using Lyle as an actual removal spell in a color combination that has no real removal, there is something to that, and I think more players should explore past the legendaries and the rares and look towards the commons and uncommons that do a niche thing.
For sure. All right. Well, anything else we want to go over?
Not off the top of my head.
All right. Call it a podcast.
Call it a podcast.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching the Enter the Labyrinth podcast. Thank you so much for supporting. At some point, we may move this off my YouTube channel. I'm not sure what the plan is yet. I'll leave that up to the rest of the team at some point. But for now, this is the home of the podcast. Good luck at your set championships, and we'll catch you next time.
Play Mufasa.
Or don't.